Hi, welcome to Gene Keys with Monifa, your path to vocal superpower. So, I have been doing this series for a little bit now, and we're getting a groove to this, right? And we're here to learn about ourselves and others, really. I'm using this as a personal exploration because each of these keys means something a little different for each of us, and any given day, depending on how I feel and depending what's showing up in my life, that interpretation may change. So, this is just a snapshot of what is going on and how I see it right now. So, what I love about the genius of the gene keys is that you can learn your genius. You can see how the same energy, the same essence, the same archetype works in that shadow level, in the gift level, in the city level. And what we can do is then not see the shadow as a negative, right? We can see it as a entry point, a key to unlocking our genius, our gift, right? And so that's the magic of the gene keys, by knowing that all of it is beautiful and that you're beautiful and that we're not ever too far away from our superpowers and our genius, right? The other thing that you might notice is that you might find an affinity to some gene keys, even though they're not in your purpose key, or maybe not even in your chart, highlighted in your chart. So what happens there is that we just have a little bit of everything inside of us, and it might show up in something that you learned in a deep relationship with somebody, or just what you have that is able to unfold, right? It's going to be able to unfold as you go through life. So yeah, so never discount a key, because we need all the energies. That's why they exist on the planet, right? And also don't discount your shadow, because even though it might not sound great and you might be like, wow, I ended up with this one, huh? Out of all the 64 shadows. If you ever get that feeling, just realize that usually, even the worse they sound, the better the gift is. We might have something that feels a little bit much to wade through in the beginning of our lives, but as we get farther along, we realize, oh, I can do this, and this actually makes me so much stronger and so much more powerful. We're starting with the purpose sphere of the gene keys because it is kind of this seed element of who we are, who and how we come in. Is This is the purpose that's activated in our life. And so it shows up, every sphere shows up in a full expression of an amino acid of the DNA structure. So your actual physical DNA that is attached to each cell of your entire being, and how we are made up. And that's how I see purpose. It's not about what you do, what you get done, who you save, who you help, who you anger, right? It's about who you be, and what you're made up of is what gives us what we need, right? So you don't have to be more than who you are. You just have to be who you are, and you are serving us by being in the energy of who you are. A quick reminder, this is not about me, even though I am the one sharing this key. This is about you and how you relate to what this energy and these words that describe this energy, what they mean. I'll use these words interchangeably as well: energy, archetype, and essence, like that essence of an energy, a quality of that energy. So all of that means just there's a kind of frequency that happens and emanates, and then there's patterns to that when it plays out into our lives. And so each of these keys is talking about one of those frequencies, one of those patterns that play out in the natural world. So yeah, so it's not about me. This is about you and how these stories come up for you around this essence and information, right? How the stories come up about your life, about the key. And so that's what you want to go to. That's what you want to pull from. And how would you talk about how this energy is played out for you? Has it played out through your own personal experience? Has it played out with you in relationship to somebody else? Okay, so that's what we're trying to bring together here is your own experience, and then see if we have any commonalities. Do you see things the way that I see them? Because that's going to be the fun part. The vocal superpower, when we're talking about the path to vocal superpower, we're talking about being able to resonate and emanate and act in all of the beauty of the energies that you are representing on the planet. And so when we have an attunement and understanding, and we are in the gift and the high vibrational experience of who we are on the planet. I call that a signature vibration. It's beautiful, it's magnetic, and who you are here to play with and be with in your relationships, in your business, and your experience of getting things done on the planet. That's who gets to show up when we're in our highest energy. And when we're in the lowest energy, we have the experiences that we wish we had less of. And so, again, just being able to notice what those look like and make a decision. I call it the pause. Take a time, and then you take a little bit of contemplation time to realize what's been going on and how you want things to go forward, and the possibilities for you to go forward in that gift, and jump into that. Today, we are talking about Gene Key 11, the shadow of obscurity, the gift of idealism, and the city of light. This key is really about vision, right? But both the internal vision, our dreams, and then external vision, what we see in the world, and as a result of our perspective, our inner thought process, and understanding. So it's directly connected to this idea of the eyes. So if you think about vision, you think about image, you think about imagination, right? This is where light meets imagination and how things show up in our experience. The challenge here is that a lot of how we are hurting is from that shadow experience. From that low vibration experience, this is where we see, perceive, and feel suffering. In the shadow, obscurity is about the illusion, delusion of those things that we think we're seeing clearly. And so the shadow limits the ability to see things that are truly the essence of patterns, how the earth and the world work together. And so what happens is that instead of seeing things intuitively, which is kind of how we're made to do, we're not supposed to be acting from thought alone. We're supposed to be acting from all of the input, and that includes our sixth senses, right? Our intuition, and then coming to an answer. But we have been taught to think our way to an answer in language and in number. And so it creates these crazy perceptions based on whoever taught us that language and those numbers and what they mean, the meaning behind them, right? So in this obscure place, in this shadow, it can create this virtual reality, right? Not the VR for Meta, right? But like a true virtual reality that your perception may not be matching how others are seeing the world. And so, yeah, so it can cause this way that you're just feel kind of trapped in that the things that you think should come to pass don't actually come to pass. The things that you're working toward don't come to fruition, right? So you can unlock this idea of like just thinking yourself into a cage that doesn't fully function and it's not fully useful and powerful for you by doing a lot of things, and we do some crazy things to do this too, but any kind of brain training, so anything from the mystical, spiritual techniques, but drugs, people have used drugs to unlock the brain, and then therapy, any kind of therapy or that kind of goes in deep into this. Have you ever heard of shadow work, stuff like that, right? The therapy, like kind of the clinical therapy might look a little different, but is it really? Because you're just talking about the shadow and how it's showing up and how you're perceiving it, right? And then art. Art to me is the best way, art and creativity. And we're gonna speak to also how Richard Rudd brings that into the understanding of the key as well. So because our brain is made up of two hemispheres and they're supposed to be balanced and they're supposed to use equally, that we're not just supposed to be linearly logical, we're supposed to be bringing in unseen subconscious kind of learnings as well, things that are in the background, right? A lot of us may even have that, and we call it a condition of our thought process. So, like ADHD is actually a way of seeing things that aren't really relevant. And so you get distracted by things because the relevancy is not as distinctive in that linear logic, right? And so, what's beautiful about a brain that works that way is that they might see something that is actually pertaining to the current situation that wasn't something they were taught, it wasn't something that they learned and can remember and think logically about. It's something that shows up in the environment, and then they are able to apply it in a way that most people wouldn't see the connection, right? So that's what creativity is, and that's kind of awesome and beautiful. So again, how are you perceiving the things that somebody might say that that's terrible? Well, they're distracted and they can't do well in school when they're at a young age and all this kind of thing. And you're like, well, maybe if you understood the brain and you understood the process, it would be actually even. And that's what we've seen, right? For people that have found their way out of that container, that they realize that, oh, I actually can benefit from the way my brain works, right? And so we get a lot of really successful like CEOs and leaders because they can't do it the way everybody else does it. And so they find this new and amazing way to show the world how to do things a little bit better, a little bit differently. That perception is meant to be attached to our understanding of archetypes and how we become through those essences and energies that we talked about in the beginning, right? And it's can be thrilling, these archetypes, that when you get kind of rooted into one of them in the shadow, it can also be terrifying, right? And so, what we're looking for is to be able to navigate that minefield of lost dreams, the things that you weren't able to get to that would kind of haunt you because you know that in some part of you, you realize that that was actually what was supposed to happen. This and the feeling of wanting to escape because those things aren't happening the way that something in you tells you they should. It makes you want to live in some denial, right? Because you can create your own perception. So you can just be in a delusion experience. And then it always, I feel like in our society, if you're not getting to the productive, the manifested, the created, then you're going to feel a bit of guilt. You're going to feel like somebody may be stopping you from getting there. Like, well, this life is rigged, right? Like, if I had this other brain, I'd be like those other people. So, it comes down to really starting to be able to trust your dreams and intuition instead of just believing the thought and logic that you're given and brought up in. And that's for all of us, really. That's kind of all of our paths. If we have any kind of evolutionary, developmental expansion path. So, on the repressive side, so when that energy gets repressed inside the body, they're calling that fantasizing. Fantasizing in this key is about using that archetypal, that essence of that energy as imagery. And then you take that imagery and you just create your own little world. So we repress that inward, right? And Karen said, well, I can't manifest outside, so I'm just going to manifest all my amazingness inside. It's just like life anyways, because it feels that way. It's, a vivid dream, if you ever had one, feels like real life. It doesn't feel like a dream. It feels like the best parts of life, right? And so that's where it becomes the outlet, but it's not a healthy outlet because nothing external is happening. So without that, if you try something healthy like creativity, then it can be great because you're creating from that kind of angst and transmuting that into something that we can all love and experience and feel life of. But if it's not, if you don't have that outlet, it can create a lot of fear and a lot of fear of the external world, and it can also just drain your energy. And that's not just your auric energy, that's your physical energy. You can just get super tired because that energy is not feeling like it's going anywhere, and it's a little bit of a depression. Anything repressive moves to this element of depression. And life and that archetype and what the possibilities are keep shifting towards that shadow, so things get darker and darker and darker, and we feel like we'll never get anything done. It's like that creative, that power, that energy that allows us to be creative gets locked down. All right. So on the reactive side, sending that imagery and that energy and that essence outward in the shadow is diluted. So this is, if you ever heard of somebody being called delusional, then you get it, right? It's kind of like, what world are you living in? That's not what the rest of us are experiencing right now. And it's very true. So it just takes that ability, that possibility of being able to imagine, and it throws it out as a perception, as a mirror onto the world. And so there, when you're living in this place, you're from a delusional perspective, everything is how you see it and everything makes sense to you. And then it becomes into this thing where um, you're trying to convince everybody of your fantasy, or you're thinking everybody else is crazy. Like, what is up with these people? They're not seeing what I'm seeing, right? And instead of using that creative energy to actually build real things and things that other people get to experience with you, this reactive way of hiding in your imaginary world, but in the real world, right? So you're kind of using the illusion to hide in. Well, I don't know. I don't want to see how it's really going. So I'm just going to live in this space over here because this is my world over here and I like this one better, even though it might not be accurate. And again, it just impedes the ability to actually get things done in a way that serves others and also serves yourself in the way that you get to experience the love and joy of creating a co-opted reality, right? So other people living in that with you. And so in the gift, like turning this all around, and the gift in the high vibration is idealism. And Richard Rudd calls it magical realism. And I love that because the definition for magic is amazing. We're going to get into in a little bit. And it's the greatest gift. He talks about how this is the gift that we're actually needing more of. And if we could live in this imagination and imagery and creative power, then we would be in a more healed world. And I know that from my own experience and my passion about music and art and creativity. When you've lived that experience, you realize how much that makes you a better human, because you get to know yourself in a way that you wouldn't have if you hadn't lived through certain experiences and challenges of making the thing that you want to be beautiful and felt to others. And so it can be massively healing because you're healing as that process unfolds. So it's beautiful. It's like, and this is the expression of humanity that has been slowly repressed, or maybe quickly repressed over the histories, right? The feminine power, creative power, imagination. And like it creates this imbalance in our brains and in our world. We've seen the results of not having more expansive views in just the continued pollution of the planet and the continued division, continued suffering of whole communities, right? And so those are examples of us not being integrated left and right brain creatively and logically. All of these things are needed in order for the balance that we were meant to have to be coming to pass. So without that, the imagery gets trapped, the imagery and what gets to come with it. So, again, those essences, those archetypes, and the wisdom of that reality, because that's how all things are becoming, gets trapped without that balance. And we are looking to have that memory of that wisdom unlocked by reconnecting with it through our intuition, through our imagery, through our dreams. Okay. So those dreams are actually recalling to you that wisdom, right? So if you're not if being able to connect to them in a way that can be shared, they're not able to share that wisdom. We're not able to create from that wisdom. That's what we want. But if we are, right, then we get to do some pretty cool stuff. Idealism has been traditionally, because of the suppression of the feminine, been a bit of a bad rap, daydreaming, this kind of thing. It's been given a bad rap. But it's only the shadow that causes those things, because only the shadow puts you in a place where things aren't actually being creative or productive from those dreams and images. And so it's actually the opposite of unproductive. Real idealism, the gift of idealism, is the opposite of that. So the opposite of that in the gene keys is gene key 60, which is realism. And it's founded upon magical truth. And this is the definition that Richard Rudd gives us: that the only thing needed for magic to occur is some form of structure and an open mind. So in our current world and current reality, we have plenty of structure. The minds, though, are they open? This is what I want to know for you. They're not quite open. And we don't get this kind of magical creation, the world building. Like, the best we can get is our cartoons and this kind of thing, because and games, because that's the only place has been acceptable. That's the place that the market finds it productive. But we can actually use these things to create our reality and our own experiences in our communities. So, first, in order for you to be able to do that trick of magic, of manifestation, you want to be totally open to your ideals and dreams and letting those come through. Right? Now, when you first open up to those dreams and those imaginings, it can be confusing, because for the people that are in this key, like, this is real stuff. Their daydreams can feel as real as a night dream, right? And as you start letting those influence you, it can feel like getting caught up, and it can feel a little illusionary. But it's actually not a problem unless you are identifying with the dreams. If you're identifying, so with these dreams and imagery that are bringing in these ancient archetypes, if you're identifying them with them as if they are you, or you are saying, well, I am this person in this dream, in this image, in this archetype, then it can be misleading, right? Because what you're dreaming, what you're imagining, is really just leading you to the next step to create the thing. So this is what's kind of confusing. You don't get to see the final product. So some people with really clear vision, and there's a couple cases associated with visioning for the community, and that's a little different because they are taking into context all of the things. But what happens with a lot of 11, I think, is that zooming in on a single archetype at a moment, or bringing in a few, right, at a moment, and the dream and imagery. And so if you feel like that's you, you are, the reincarnated Buddha, and so I must sit here, then you are taking the wrong interpretation. It's saying maybe sit down at a certain time each week and see what comes up for you in the vision that you're creating, but maybe not devoting your entire life to the Buddhic path and like all of this other stuff that tends to get to be you assigning your life path to somebody else's or some archetype's experience. Okay. And so when that does is that it allows for the mobility of the energy to create the actual thing that is meant to be created from you, and not some recreation of an old something that's already been done that's not no longer needed, right? It doesn't get presented if you're not allowing it to be shaped and molded by the current energy as you go. So you don't get to see the whole picture, but it shows you steps along the way. And being able to play with that imagery and think and contemplate, what do these things mean? How do I apply it to this my life in this way, or in this project, or in this business? Then you get to live into that manifestation of that result of playing with the different energies that show up at different times. Okay. So that's the beauty of the gift of idealism. And we can use that's pretty powerful when you can create magic just by playing in your own mind. So in the city, it's light. And there's a complex and evolutionary way of speaking to this. And I always think the city, there's no better way to explain city perspectives of the Gene Keys than go read the book, find the book, and read it if this interests you, because each city is like just this magical emanation of the essence of the key. This one is light, and how I can help you see a little bit of that right now is that as you flow through life, you will see the light that is in and behind throughout our experience in this city. So when you're in this city, the themes and archetypes that you've been using and seeing, and maybe even bringing into the possibilities of what you're currently creating, become a single archetype. And they all the things that have made truth evident to you up until now become one in this city. And this image that ends up being the one image, the one archetype, is your own nemesis. So when I read this, I was like, ah, yes, right? Because reminds me of Batman. Okay, like how Batman is that? So so he gets locked in the cave with all those bats, and it freaks him out as a child, right? Not locked, but falls into the well with the bats in it. And then, of course, that traumatic experience creates this imprint of terror when it comes to bats. And then when he becomes Batman, or goes through the process that allows him to be Batman, he goes back to the bats, right? And like he explores everything that comes up within him, the awe, the terror, the chaos, the love that comes up from that experience, right? And so this one image becomes the dissolving of this separate self, which is essentially how shadow works. It's basically telling you that there's something bad about you. And so when you dissolve that separate self, then what's real and what's beautiful, what's purely light appears. And when you can be and think from pure light in mind and body, then everything you see has that emanation. And so that's the magic of the city of light, that all things have, and our light of that light is shining through all things. And that when you get into this city, that you are actually experiencing the mind and body of the divine that allows you to see the purity of light in all things. So that's beautiful. One last point, that all light comes from the evolving of darkness. So you notice how bringing all that one together didn't bring up the perfection, right? It brought up the nemesis. So that darkness and having that experience and being aware and living through that depth is what allows for light. So again, not poo-pooing the shadow, right? The shadow is important. It is giving us access to light, to our gene key gift. So it's just as important to understand and realize what that is, because it is the essence of how the gift is possible and comes to be. In line one, we are talking about the physicality and the bones. Remember the purpose and how we are coming into the purpose and activating the purpose is about how our DNA is wired. And so for a line one, the DNA is wired through physicality, how we are most enlivened, how we most realize that we are here and that we're having an experience is through the physicality of bones. The bones themselves hold this experience. And what's magical about having the line one with this key, we'll talk about it in a second, but the essence of this is that the body is the temple. And so movement and just living, like living life, being in the sun, enjoying movement, enjoying good food, enjoying the sensuality of things, the wetness of water, the crackle of fire, the all the things bring you into this knowing of feeling lively and on purpose. Okay. So the bones are crystalline and carry the memory. So again, that's pretty magical because we were talking about memory as ancestral dreaming before. So think about that a little bit. And then this memory gets to evolve through the living, through the movement, through the being and the different experiences. And when you try to play this out into connection, into relationship and service among others, the line one in shadow looks like the loner. And the gift, it looks like being an anchor. So in shadow, the repressive tendency is not standing up for yourself, leaving more than you would fight for to be seen or heard. The reactive tendency is forcing other people to see your point of view. So not going inward, but going outward and be like, guess what? Like, this is how it goes, right? And the main block is that you feel the need to be secure. And you don't ever feel secure enough, so you're driven to find security. What can happen in this loner situation is that you don't trust people, and you're not connected with people because you don't trust them. And then you seclude yourself and you go into a place where you can be secure because you can only trust yourself, this kind of feeling. And it feels like being in a closet. And really, what happens because you don't trust anybody, you become very self-absorbed. You can also become super self-reliant because, emotionally, that's the main reason. Like, well, I can't. This is the belief that you can't hurt yourself. If you're alone, then nobody can hurt you. Which is not true. I've had this experience. So shadow has this essence that you feel like it could be true and you don't feel any way out of it, but it may not actually be the way that things work and how things are best lived out. This feeling of emotional hiding. So on the gift side and the high frequency of this line is the anchor. So in the inner strength, we're standing up for yourself in a firm but kind way. And the outer strength, you're listening to the needs of the other. So out of the shadow of self-absorption, you're able to hear. So in the gift, you're able to hear and listen truly to others. Highest potential, your confidence makes others feel secure. So isn't that pretty magical? If you come from this place of seeking security constantly, and then you end up in a place where you can help others feel secure. And so, what's beautiful about this line is that your relationships become places where you get to show and shine and give and share in strength. And the gift has this compassionate tone instead of this kind of defensive and wall when they're speaking to others in the shadow. So in the gift, there's a kindness and a compassion to the tone. And, understanding that other people have been bullied the way you were afraid or have been bullied in the past. It's about your being able to empathize with others because of your own experiences and things that you may have been worried about. So that is the magic of line one. When line one is acting through 11, then we get this combination of things of feeling that you can only trust yourself, building this inner world of illusion or delusion, and thinking that you can only be safe here in this world if you do things by yourself, by on your own, that you're most effective or most powerful by yourself on your own. And then realizing that everything feels futile. There's no purpose to anything. You feel disconnected. You feel like you can't even get outside to do the things that you need to do. And so the essence of like how you live dries up. So that line one needing to move, and now you're stagnant because you're only locked up in your closet in your corner to be safe. And so you lose access to the meaningfulness of life when you're in that space. So it creates this cycle of just feeling, well, I'll just create something else. And they can look like, excursions where you're like, well, no, I'll just tell everybody else how it is. And I'll make sure that they see it my way. And because my way is the only way that I can be safe and secure. So I don't want to hear anybody else's perspective on how to do this because my way is the safe way. And then not getting the results that you imagined, and then heading back into that cycle of internalizing and maybe secluding yourself again. That cycle of shadow. And then the gift experience is the complete opposite, right? So we have this experience where we get to shine and flow in the movement, in our action. And as we act, the more we see our vision and our archetype that is next. It shows us the path of how things are coming to be and can come to be. And then you're living in this flow of creation and getting to experience and play with the different ways that things that show up and people that come to play with you and in their experiences, and realizing through their experiences that you can effectively implement some wisdom in here and in here and in here and in here. And so it's a really beautiful combination of being able to fully realize your dream and fully create a place of beauty, security for others. So, if you enjoyed this key and you want to be sure to hear the next one, click the link to subscribe. As you can tell, I'm not doing these keys in order, right? So how am I doing them? Well, people request them. So if you put in your information and the link in the description box, then you could be next on the channel. So go ahead, and if you don't know your chart yet, that link is also in the description box. Just go get your free chart and look at the bottom for the purpose sphere, and then send me that key and the line. So the number and the number after the dot. Okay. And so your video could be next. Vocal contemplation of key 11, line 1.